and you are on the lifeboat. Can I get a 5x5 if things are sounding good? I would appreciate that. The internet in the where I live is giving me trouble, so I'm hoping that I'm coming across okay. Let me see how we're looking here. Oculi Mortis, good to see you. Arizona Raven, Arizona, I hope you are feeling better. I know that you went through a tough one yesterday. Chris, good to see you. Brandon, great to see you. Great to get your goodbye letter. That will be something that everybody's going to get a chance to hear a little later this week coming up. That's something that I'll be sharing with everybody. Cindy Lamb, good to see you. Charlie Mullins, always a pleasure. We're going to be shy of a couple of the normal names. Fiona Crispin is not feeling well. She is under the weather. If we can keep her in our thoughts and our prayer. Going through Chiu. Fiona is going through, I think, the same thing that you have a PET scan on Monday. We will keep you in our prayers. That's a lot easier to go through, that PET scan, than that last one that you just went through. We want to keep Fiona Crispin in our thoughts and prayers. Lady Fiona is really under the weather. She seems to have what I have, which is really tough. She's going through something. Joanna, good to see you. She's going through some stuff with her stomach, and yeah, if we could send her all of the thoughts, prayers, positive energy that we could possibly spare, that would be fantastic. I know that this is the time of year where everybody on the planet goes shopping. I just recently did that. I actually just got back from the mall. Moment of truth, Joe, good to see you. It was something that I had to get done. It's that time of year. You have to get some shopping done, and people, it was awful. The malls are full. These are things that I haven't done sober, and going in there and dealing with the crowds. And for the first time in my life, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but for the first time in my life, I was recognized in the mall, which was I was actually talking to a crew member when it happened, and someone came up and said, "Full of hope, good to see you." Yeah, my stomach's still not good, people. Hopefully we're going to get through this one together. But so Chichi says, I am not a shopper. Well, how about this? A person comes walking up to me and I'm wearing a mask. CW, good to see you. And the person comes up and says, which one are you? Now, I was wearing the sweatshirt that says, never quit quitting. And on my my lifeboat sweatshirt. So the person comes up and says, which one are you? And I said, I beg your pardon? And they said, are you the captain, or are you Johnny? So of course I told them that I was the captain, and a bit of an embarrassing thing because I'm not used to that, people. And then on the way out the door, a guy said, love the sweatshirt, Captain. Saigon Cinnamon, good to see you. So it was a bizarre, kind of a surreal thing. Not something I think that I will ever be comfortable with. And on top of not feeling, I got recognized. It was bizarre. It really was. And the woman wanted me to sign her day planner. So if she's popping on tonight, and I'm going to embarrass her because it's just a really funny story, because she then said, I want you to know I'm your biggest fan. And I said, thank you. That means the world to me. And she said, so what are you doing in Nevada? Which is really, really funny if you think about it, because if you're my biggest fan, then you probably have a pretty good idea that I live in Nevada and that this is the part of Nevada that I live in. But I have a feeling she was probably more of a someone who recognizes my brother. I get that all the time. People who think I'm Johnny, I get that constantly. So, people, I had I hate shopping too, man. I really do. And, shopping under the best of circumstances. If you go to shopping for somebody in November, or you go shopping for somebody in July, it is two really different things. You know what I mean? Like, this time of year is just, I mean, I don't know, it's enough to steal the holiday spirit right out from underneath you. You know what I mean? Everybody is just sort of grumpy, I guess is probably the way to put it. So I had a presentation that I was going to do today where I was going to go over the sort of the history of my drug use. And the reason that I was going to do that, and I had a thumbnail built for it and everything else, and then I changed to the thumbnail that you people saw, if you did happen to see it, excuse me, that says Q&A on it, because I want to go over the history of my drug use. It's something that I need to do because what has happened is there's a core group of you, and you're all here. I've seen, most of you have, I've seen your names here, that have been with the Lifeboat since it was the Tommy Scoville show. And, for those people, just about everything there is to know about me. But in the last month, we've got about 600 new crew members that have come on board. And for the most part, I doubt that these people are going back and doing deep. In fact, I know they're not going back and doing, deep dives yet. And they may choose to do that at some point. But the reason I know that they're not is because I get emails from these people, and I get emails that say things like, well, I know that you were addicted to heroin, but I'm wondering if you have ever done cocaine. Now, if you ever, if you have been here from the word go, then you really have a pretty good handle on my my previous drug use, and you have a handle on sort of how I wound up here wearing this hat and doing what I do. But for those people who just got here and who aren't going back, the number of questions that I get that are answered in the previous videos, in fact, they all have been answered in the previous videos, and I'm not bagging on you. If you sent me one of those emails, I'm just happy that you've reached out to me, and I can't thank you enough. But what I want to do today is sort of, I'm going to do just a brief history of some of what I've done. It's not going to be a full show of me talking about my drug use, but I would like to sort of bring this out so that the people, Seventh Son, good to see you. Can't stay with my daughter. Can't stay with my daughter. I said I'd check in, so consider me checked in. Oh, okay, you can't stay. Yeah, you're with your daughter. I appreciate you checking in. Is everything going all right, my brother? And we love you too, man. We really do. This is you talk about a fixture here. You talk about a crew member that is just such a part of the fabric of this show. Seventh Son's been here from Jump Street. And, yeah, we love you, man. We really do. And hopefully this, you spending time with your daughter is a peaceful thing, that it's something that's beautiful. My boy is going to be coming out here for Thanksgiving. I just found that out today, and I'm really, really excited. It's great. That's what I like to hear, man. That's awesome. I haven't seen my son in a long time, obviously, since before I went to prison. So finding out that he's going to be coming out here today was just like winning the lottery. The last few days that has been epic in terms of a lot of good news. I got approved for the trip that I had planned to make to go see my my aunt and uncle and see a whole lot of the family members that I haven't seen in a long time. I was waiting on approval for that for a long time, and you never know if the federal government is going to let you do anything. Thank you, Joanna. I'm so excited. I can't tell you. But you never know if the federal government is going to approve you for any kind of a travel voucher. It's more than just your probation officer giving you a thumbs up. Wherever you're going has to say, I don't have a problem with this person, coming into our state or our city, or whatever the case may be. And that's really kind of a big deal. If your crime was not something that people find particularly dangerous, if you're trespassed on federal property or you did something like that, then it's almost pro forma. But if it sounds bad, and bank robbery obviously sounds bad, and then throw in a gun charge, and it just makes it paints a picture of a guy that you probably wouldn't want visiting your city. So it's always hit and miss. Also, a little proof to the people in the world. If you have failed any drug tests, or you've not paid your fines, or you've not gone to counseling or done any of those things, if you're not current on everything and up to snuff and doing what you're supposed to on everything, then you can't go. So it was really awesome to get that approval. Miss V, good to see you. She is the captain of her own destiny, and I love that. You all are the captains of your own destiny. I think you should all have a hat. But So yeah, I've had a lot of really exciting news recently. This has been a really, really big deal. Yeah, thanks, Chi-Chi. It's just exciting. You know, there are people in my family that I haven't seen in some cases in decades. I avoided family. You know, I'm not sure how it is for every addict. You know, a lot of times when I tell stories and I relate things about addiction, I relate them about my own addiction. As far as what addiction does to you as a person, and how those, how addiction affects you personally. Those things are pretty standard in a lot of ways, but how you react to what happens to you is very unique. It's as unique. There are as many different reactions to every situation and every scenario is that there is people. Okay, Saigon. Sorry, my brother. It's as unique as the number of people who have had drug problems, and for me, I hated being around family members because I always, even under the best of circumstances, it meant running off to the bathroom to go and take care of my addiction. Because if I spent 8 to 10 hours with somebody, without going to make sure, then this stuff started, and pretty soon I started acting like somebody that they didn't know, and that definitely did a lot of damage to the relationships that I had with family. Jackson, Flaming Jackson, good to see you. That is a lot of emojis, people. That right there is a beautiful array of emojis, although I don't think I saw a squirrel anywhere in there, Jackson. I'm disappointed. So back to the question and answer thing. The number of emails that I've gotten in the last week from people who all said things like, well, I know your drug of choice isn't the same as mine and you haven't done this. People, I abused everything. So, and I know that as I look out on the deck of the boat and I see all the people here, you all have been here for a long enough period of time that you have either you were there when I did the videos, live or brand new or put them up that day. But a lot of the people who are just getting on board are going to end up watching this that we're recording right now at a later date. So I'd kind of like to bring up, I'd like to sort of clarify some of the things that I continually get. There you go, squirrels all over the place. Yeah, I'd like to bring up some of the things that I get questions on constantly so that we sort of, I answer them all at once. I don't mind getting these questions. I love getting any kind of correspondence between me and the crew. I really do. I love it. But as we get bigger, answering all of them, if it's something that I can answer all at once, it gives us a little bit more breathing room with people who are calling to say, here is my very specific problem. And we want to make sure that those people always sort of get the best attention that they can get. From me, that's important to me. I started drug use at about 13. That's my memory. I'm pretty sure it was about 13. And it started like so many other people. I started smoking pot. And from pot, I moved on to just about everything else. So when you start talking about, hallucinogenics, I did mushrooms, I did LSD, and I did a pretty decent amount of both of those. It's not like it was, none of these, were really daily, but I did a lot of LSD, I did a lot of mushrooms, I did mescaline, I did microdots. That was all really popular for a little while. DMT I have done. That was, and I would say in a very limited, it was towards the end of my drug experience. And one of the things I found was that once I found heroin, really everything else sort of just kind of fell to the wayside. To me, that was the top of the food chain. It was exactly how I wanted to feel. So my experimentation with other drugs sort of came to a stop. And the opiate thing started out with pain pills like so many other people. You just got a whole Thanksgiving meal delivered to you. How cool is that, huh? Guaranteed that was delivered by somebody with a very large heart. I love hearing stories like that. Miss V, that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So after sort of the trip drug things, I moved to a big city. I grew up in a very small town, so I moved to a very big city, and cocaine became a really big deal. This was sort of that time in America where cocaine was super, super popular, and I did coke every way you could do coke. You know what I mean? I snorted it, I shot it, I smoked it. We didn't call it crack because I made it myself. I wasn't buying it on street corners. We were cooking it ourselves, but however you want to church it up, I was smoking crack. So I went through that. What else? Every single pill known to man. A lot of pills that are no longer around. I did things like Mandrax and Quaaludes, and drugs that pills that have been taken off of the market. In this day and age, barbiturates are pretty much gone. I mean, phenobarbital is still around, and there is some. The pineal gland does produce it. You're referring to DMT, I assume. But and then I got into ecstasy. I was living in a time where they didn't have laws on the books that made ecstasy illegal in the state that I was in. So you could buy it in nightclubs. And that sort of became an experimentation period for the entire state. And there were just a lot of people that were doing ecstasy at that time. And from that, as they started to make those drugs illegal, all of the other party drugs sort of came out. So there was after the ecstasy thing, they changed to a drug that they called Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve is just, it was a step down version. Instead of methyl dioxymethamphetamine, right? Instead of the MDMA, it was like MDMT or MDM whatever. It was just a, one little molecule off. Felt basically like the same thing. From there, it went to something called Scoop, which you could also still buy like at General Nutrition Center. And it was probably closest akin to GHB, gamma hydroxybutyrate. And GHB is gives you the feeling like ecstasy, where you get that sort of lovey, kind of heady buzz, except instead of going up, it was down. So instead of seeing people that are just, sort of into themselves, you had people nodding almost like like a heroin affectation. But that was really popular for a while. After moving on from there, injuries brought me back to pain meds, and the world had just discovered that you could take Percodan and take the active ingredient and make it into a long-term, long-acting painkiller that was time-released, right? So oxycodone, which is the main ingredient in Percodan, became OxyContin, which is just a timed-release version of the same drug. And I was going to a pain specialty clinic that was writing me prescriptions for 12 OxyContin 80s a day. And from that point on, it was all over. That was when it really became, I'm glad to hear it's better, full of hope. Don't give up on us. If it pops off, try again. Jesse Brown, good to see you. Jesse, the things that you put up in the lifeboat over on Facebook are just awesome. I mean, honestly, your taste in memes, second to none. It's always stuff that really makes you feel good, and I'm really happy that you're there. So, I did a bunch of designer drugs that most people haven't heard of. Furanome dihydro, FDH, which is another designer drug very similar to GHB. You can still buy it legally on the internet. I did that. I did all of the, I went through a phase where we were buying things out of China, and we were doing, these drugs that that aren't the real deal but are close enough, like the ones that I talked about a few weeks back, or it might be a week back, a few shows back. Alpha PVP, it sometimes gets called gravel, but these were analogs, right? And if you're unfamiliar with the analog is a concept of changing something just enough. Now you're Mr. Red Cheeks. Good, because I've been known to get embarrassed while in front of the camera, although the chief executor of my embarrassment isn't feeling well today, so I doubt that should be an issue. But we all get red cheeks from time to time. It's not a bad thing. So the analog concept, people, is that they change just a small chemical component in something. For instance, I've really been going off the last few days about fentanyl because of the number of people it's killing. And Saigon Cinnamon said something really intelligent the other day. I think he said it in the comments section. I don't think it was in the live chat. But he said 100,000 deaths in a year, I promise you, is not even close to real. And the reason is that, fentanyl coming into the USA is full of crap and not standard in measurements. You're absolutely right. And in most cases, it's not, the real fentanyl is called alpha, there's a number, it's alpha something or other, and then fentanyl. It is It's done in labs. It's a painkiller. It's a super effective painkiller. It's about 50 times the strength of morphine. And for what they use it for, any woman that's had an epidural has had fentanyl. It's a super, super effective painkiller. And for what it's used for, it's awesome. Unfortunately, what we're getting isn't that. This stuff's getting cranked out in labs where people aren't wearing rubber gloves and suits, and these aren't hermetically sealed environments to make sure that the stuff that's coming out is uniform. And it has a problem across the board. It's one of those drugs that doesn't like to live in suspension. It has 200 inhalations in it. Each inhalation is going to deliver to you the exact same amount of the drug, right? So that is in suspension. That drug is going to come out in the mist in the same amount every single time you do it. Okay, well, take fentanyl and start cutting it into things, and there's no way to make that happen. So if you take and you cut a kilo of something and you put into it a quarter of an ounce of fentanyl, you're not going to get, if you take a sample out of one side of the kilo and you take a sample out of the other side of the kilo and you test the two of them, you're not going to get an equal amount of fentanyl in each side. So what you're going to end up with is a hot shot. You're going to end up with a hot spot, or whatever you want to call it. But if you happen to be the unlucky addict that gets a hold of that part of the kilo, you could be getting a concentration of fentanyl that's enough to kill 15, 20 people. And it doesn't matter how you spell it, full of hope, hon. We knew what you were talking about. It matters not to me, I promise you. The biggest problem that we're having right now in the United States, when you start to really sort of delve into these overdoses, what we're seeing most right now is not from people who are dying on the needle. They're from people who are dying on the pill. They have set up these clandestine labs just across the border that are knocking off pills. And they're knocking, and I don't just mean you got a big bag of pills that say OC stamped on the side and they look like an OxyContin. They're making the bottles that these go into. They're making the literature that comes along with it. So, because as much as addicts tend to not worry about things they really ought to worry about, it's gotten to a point where addicts are very, very concerned about the possibility of overdosing on, damn it all to hell. I have frozen up, which is making it difficult for me to read. Raven, boy, I would love for you to retype what you just typed, because, as I said, my beautiful internet is locking up on me. What's happening, people, is that addicts are starting to wise up, and they're paranoid that the pills that they buy, when people start saying to their suppliers, hey, are you sure this isn't fentanyl? Are you sure that I'm not, getting counterfeit? Now they're counterfeiting the packaging and the bottles so that they can come across the border and say to somebody, oh, no, man, here's the real deal. Here's a pill bottle that says Pfizer Pharmaceutical on the side of it, or says Pomfret or Huffman LaRoche or any of the other big manufacturers of these pills, or any of the generics or whatever, so that these are really, the counterfeits have gotten to the point where they are even showing up in pharmacies, and not because of that they're getting into the supply chain. Like everything else in life, you get, if a pharmacist is dishonest and you give him the opportunity to buy a counterfeit drug for next to nothing that he can put on the shelf and sell at the normal price. Now you've got a situation where instead of having a profit margin of 15%, he's got a profit margin of 95%. And unfortunately, there are people in this world who are dishonest enough to do that. That benzo was the same. All the meds was in the second half he took. Oh, yeah, okay. There are people who have complained about this with almost every substance out there. There are people, I've heard complaints about benzos. I've heard a ton of complaints about Suboxone when people get it on the film. I've never experienced this, but people will say, I did a half of it that did absolutely nothing. The other half had all of it in it. I don't know. I mean, but I'm not surprised. I'm really not. But right now, we really have got, a prescription. Here's the thing. Once again, these people are fighting to get these counterfeits in the pharmacies. It's happening. These pills really are ending up everywhere. if you think about, if you think about for a second, let's say a bottle of 1,000 OxyContin, right? The 80s. When I was back in the day, they were, the insurance company was paying $65 a pill for me to get that. That was literally the cost to the insurance company. So the pharmacy had to be buying them for what, 50, 55, somewhere in there, and making maybe a $10. Well, if that pharmacy has the opportunity to buy what they think is real, it's in a box, somebody comes by and goes, hey man, this fell off the truck. There are always people along the way that will take the short route in order to make more money. And if somebody comes by and says, I could sell you 100 bottles of this for the price that you would have paid for 3, light bulbs start going off, and they open these boxes and there's all the literature. It says Huffman LaRoche. It's got all of the stuff and it looks exactly like the real deal. And these are ending up into the legitimate supply chain, which is terrifying. You know what I mean? It really is. It's something that my advice would be this. If I'm going to a pharmacy, I'm going to a nationwide chain, because private pharmacies, and look, I'm always about trying to support the smaller guy, but nobody's going to Walmart to see if they can't, break in, to the supply chain and get them a cheaper product that's knocked off overseas. It's not who the criminal is going to target, because Walmart is buying these things directly from Huffman LaRoche and they're supplying how many stores, right? So we're talking about, unbelievable size contracts. People, I know that this is probably going to get this video pushed to the absolute bottom of anything that is ever going to get shared. But think for a second about the size of these companies. Yesterday, there was a story on the news, and if you think I'm kidding, I was talking with somebody, a friend of mine, yesterday morning. He and I were on the phone, and we were discussing big pharma and the power behind these companies, right? I try not to get political. How about $1,000 a minute? Or was it a second? I don't want to misquote this. It was either $1,000 a minute or $1,000 a second. And this is profit just off of this C plus math thing that is going on. It wouldn't surprise me if Walmart cut corners like that too. Jesse, it's not that I'm not saying that they would be above it. What I'm saying is that it would be far more difficult to get to somebody like that. Once again, you've got individuals that are making, the size of the purchases. I don't count the days anymore, but it's 11:30 here, and I tell myself, well, you got nothing else done. You didn't drink. Well done, Hope. It's important to me. You know what? Hey, sometimes that is all it takes, right? There are times that getting through the next minute is all it takes. I'm proud of you, for real. The rest of it can fall by the wayside, because the most important thing in the world right now is that you can get yourself into a solid place, and then you can start worrying about the rest of the things. You know something, Jesse, and I don't blame you in the slightest. And I'll tell you something, I promise that I don't do things like this, but the way they treat customers has become, I was gone for a long time. I went to, I went and took care of my debt to society. And when I got back out from my incarceration and I went to shop at Walmart, it was not the same place in any way, shape, or form. I was there the other day, and I was trying to help somebody get some cushions for the chairs in their kitchen, and we walked up to 3 employees, one right after the other. So the first one, hey, do you know if you have any of these in the back? This thing just died. Held up the phone that apparently they use to check stuff. This thing just died. Not, hold on, let me see if I can find someone else to help you. I digress. But 3 employees in a row that just had zero desire to help us in any way. I was sort of blown away. But yeah, I don't blame you. But right now, the epidemic is that they're pressing fentanyl into every single kind of pill that you can possibly imagine. And another thing that you see all of the time are fake benzos. On the bright side, they're not putting fentanyl in benzos. What they do for the most part is you can get Valium, right, diazepam, in Mexico so cheap it's staggering, like pennies, literally, 2 or 3 pennies a pill. And then if you're buying them in large enough doses, I'm sure you could get it down to a penny a pill. And they'll take these things and crush them up, and then they'll press them into a Xanax bar. And because Xanax bars on the street now in the part of the country that I live in, you're looking at like $25 for somebody to buy a Xanax bar, and they're probably putting 3 to 4 cents worth of Valium in it. So instead of getting 3 or 4 milligrams of alprazolam, they're going to get 30 milligrams of diazepam. It's still going to give them that sort of that feeling that benzos do. It's going to relax them, and nobody is the wiser. It's not nearly as dangerous as when they start playing around with the stuff in the with fentanyl. It's just people. It's death, and I take umbrage with this, and people are going to argue this, and I'm going to get so many comments about this, but I'm going to do it anyway. China White, right? There are two main kinds of heroin in the United States of America. You either get tar. Tar heroin, you cut the bulb of the poppy, you let the sap run out, and it is a very, very easy process for most people to convert that sap into what is called tar heroin. It is raw as hell. It's not very refined. It is very strong. There is a misnomer for whatever reason in this country that the China White that is out there is 10 times stronger than tar heroin. And there's no truth to that. There isn't. Do a little research, deep dive on this thing. There is no truth to that. The stuff that they're putting out onto the street for China White is usually jumped all over. And the term China White was originally to describe, I don't care what anyone wants to argue this, it's researchable. China White was a term used to describe street fentanyl. For real. Now, not car fentanyl, which is something that they made for elephants, and literally grains of it can kill, villages. For whether people want to believe this or not, there's not a ton of that car fentanyl coming into the U.S. because it's almost impossible to do anything with. It's almost impossible to cut stuff with. It is a very difficult drug to use. It's way too strong. Whereas regular fentanyl might be 50 times the strength of heroin, car fentanyl is 10,000 times the strength of heroin. You know what I mean? It's so much stronger that it coming in contact with your skin can kill you. I mean, what are you going to do with that drug? There are still people that are bringing it over and they're trying to figure stuff out or whatever, but that's not what we're talking about when I'm here talking about fentanyl. And for the record, I abused fentanyl. This was a drug that when I had the opportunity to get, I did. And I used to get it in patches. I used to get it in lollipops. For a while, when I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, I had a guy that worked in a hospice, where people go to spend their last days. And he would get lollipops, and they were fentanyl suckers. And if you gave one to the average person, it would kill them. I mean, as far along as I was in my drug use, which at that point was like 7 grams a day, if I sucked on that thing for more than a minute, it would feel like an elephant stood on my chest. Like it would be so difficult to breathe. But it was one of those things that you would just put in your mouth for a little while, and then you'd wrap it back up. And it's given to people really sort of end of the life stuff. Joe is okay. Joe is doing great. He just has life going on. The other night we missed Joe because he was in church, which is great. No problems there. And then yesterday, Joe was actually on the call we did on Respect. He was on last night. So Joe's doing good. Joe is one of the few cats that I communicate with one-on-one using my phone. And I would love to do that with all of you, but can you imagine the difficulty? The people who end up with that number tend to be people I do interviews with, because there's no way for me to communicate with them and set things up at the same time. You kind of have to have a number in order to do that. So we'd be talking on the phone.